I didn't expect today to turn out like this. It all started so simply. Just another day on the job. But now I'm standing on the corner of a busy street, clutching a bag of candy like it's my only lifeline. My name's Jake, and for as long as I can remember, I've been scraping by. Life's been tough, but not in the way you might think. Not because of some grand disaster, but because I was born into a world that didn't give a damn about people like me. My family's never had much. Never will, most likely. My mom left when I was young, and I learned early on that you either make your own luck or you get nothing. Today, I'm standing here just trying to make a few bucks selling candy. It's not glamorous, but it gets the bills paid. Well, sometimes. And maybe, just maybe, it'll get me by until tomorrow. But right now, it's getting me more than I bargained for. She walks up to me like she owns the entire block. Sharp suit, high heels clicking against the pavement, a face like stone. Her name, I'll later find out, is Sarah. And she's the kind of person who looks at me and sees something less than human. "What do you think you're doing?" she snaps, her voice cold, cutting through the noise of the street. I freeze for a second, caught off guard by the venom in her tone. "You can't sell food without a license," she continues, eyes narrowing as she looks at the small bag of candy in my hand. "You were just selling something illegally." "That's what you were doing. I should call the police." It hits me like a slap. I can't afford trouble with the cops. Hell, I can barely afford food. My mind races, panic starting to seep in. I've dealt with a few people like her before, people who think their money or their position gives them the right to tear you down. "Please, ma'am, don't call the police. I'm just trying to get by," I say, trying to keep my voice steady, but it cracks at the end. Desperation laces my words. She glares at me, disgust written all over her face. I'm nothing to her. Nothing but a nuisance, a stain on the perfect picture she so carefully painted. It's trash like you that ruins the city for everyone else, for all the honest people in it. She spits, her words sharp enough to draw blood. I feel the heat rise in my chest. This isn't fair. I'm not a criminal. I'm not stealing from anyone. I'm just trying to survive. But then, just as I'm about to speak, another voice cuts through the air. Calm, controlled. "Is everything all right here, Miss Sarah?" It's a man's voice, low and steady, but there's authority in it. I look up, and that's when I see him. He's dressed in a suit just like her, but there's something different about him. Something that demands respect. It's the mayor, Robinson, the kind of man whose smile seems to disarm everyone around him, even people like Sarah. He steps forward, his gaze shifting from her to me, his eyes softening for just a moment. "You're right. We do," he says, nodding slowly. "I'll tell you what, son. Why don't I buy all of your candy? Will that be okay?" His words hit me like a breath of fresh air, a lifeline I didn't expect. "Really?" I asked, still in shock, looking at him like he might change his mind at any second. "Yes," he says, reaching into his pocket and pulling out a bill. "I don't have enough to make change for 100, but keep the change." I can't believe it. I'm speechless. It's not just the money, it's the fact that someone, any, is actually treating me like a human being, like I matter. I've never had that before. Sarah, however, isn't impressed. Her face twists in outrage. "What? You're encouraging this blatant lawlessness?" she says, stepping forward as if to challenge him. "You're supposed to be the mayor. You're supposed to keep criminals off the street, not pay them. This is completely unacceptable." The anger bubbles up inside me again, but this time it's not just for myself. It's for the mayor, for what he's trying to do in a city that doesn't care about people like me. Robinson doesn't flinch, though. He's calm, unbothered. "What I find unacceptable," he says, his voice low but firm, "is how you're treating this boy. He's not a criminal. He's not stealing anything, and he's not causing any trouble. He's just doing what he has to do to survive." His words settle in the air, hanging heavy. For a moment, everything goes still. And I realize something. He gets it. He understands. Sarah's face goes pale with frustration, but she can't argue with him. Not in front of everyone. Not with him standing there. "He's breaking the law," Sarah insists, trying to regain control of the situation. "It's shameful." "No," Robinson responds, stepping closer to her, his eyes never leaving hers. "What's shameful is how you're talking to him. He's done nothing to you, yet you're going out of your way to make his already difficult life even harder. Why? Why would you do that? I feel a lump form in my throat, but I can't look away from Robinson. He's right. Why do people like her do this? Why do they go out of their way to make life harder for people like me? You see, Robinson continues, his voice softening, I was just like this boy once. I was homeless. I sold whatever I could to get by. Flowers, cans, even candy. People would just pass me by like I was invisible, like I didn't matter. Do you know how that feels? How lonely that is? I can't breathe. This man, this mayor, was just like me. He was out there on the street, struggling. And now he's here standing up for me. I can't even process it. I thought politicians were all the same. Rich, untouchable, indifferent. But Robinson, he's different. He looks at me again, and for the first time today, I feel like someone actually sees me. I made a promise to myself, he says quietly, that I would never forget what it was like to have no one on my side. But I got lucky. I ended up in a foster home with some really kind people who helped me. If it wasn't for them, I wouldn't have gotten off the street. I wouldn't be here today. I wouldn't have been elected mayor. I dedicate my life to helping people like this boy, letting them know that they're not alone, that they can make it, just like I did. Sarah's face hardens again, but there's a flicker of doubt in her eyes. I can see it. She wants to argue, but she doesn't have the words. Robinson has won this round. And then, just as everything seems to settle, another voice rings out. Lily, a friend of Sarah's, steps forward, her eyes flashing with disdain. You know, Robinson, she says, her voice dripping with sarcasm, you might want to watch who you're helping. We're not in the business of coddling criminals around here. The tension in the air thickens. I know this is far from over. This is just the beginning. Robinson's face remains calm, but I can see the fire in his eyes. He knows what's at stake. He knows that helping people like me, people who are barely scraping by, means he's going up against everything people like Lily and Sarah stand for. I know exactly who I'm helping, Robinson says, his voice unwavering, and I will continue to help them no matter how many people like you try to tear them down. I feel a surge of hope, a small, fragile thing growing inside me. Maybe, just maybe, things could change. Maybe there's a chance for people like me, after all. As Robinson and Sarah continued their exchange, the tension in the air felt like it could snap at any moment. The bustling street around us seemed to fade into the background as I stood there, caught between two worlds. One where people like Sarah ruled with their money and power, and another where the mayor was doing what he could to help people like me, who didn't have much to offer except the scraps of a life that barely existed. Sarah's face was turning a shade of crimson, her jaw clenched as if she were about to explode. She clearly wasn't used to being challenged. Her whole life had been about getting what she wanted without question, without consequence. But today, in front of so many people, she was being forced to confront something she wasn't prepared for. You can't just let everyone off the hook because they're poor, Sarah spat, glaring at Robinson. This is ridiculous. What's next? Are you going to reward every criminal who walks the streets because they're struggling? Robinson didn't flinch. He stood tall, his posture calm, but there was a fire in his eyes that showed his conviction. This isn't about rewarding crime, he said, his voice measured. This is about acknowledging that everyone has a story, and everyone has a reason for being where they are. But it's up to us, people in positions of power, to do something about it, to make the effort to help, not just to judge. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Here was a man, a politician, standing up for people like me in a way I'd never thought possible. Sarah was wrong about him. He wasn't just some figurehead. He was a man who truly understood the struggle. Sarah opened her mouth to retort, but before she could, a sudden voice rang out from the crowd that had gathered around us. It was a voice I didn't expect to hear today. What's going on here? I turned my head to see Megan, Sarah's daughter, walking toward us. She had been standing off to the side, watching the exchange between her mother and the mayor. She looked confused, but her eyes were wide with curiosity. Megan was about my age, and I had seen her around town a few times, but we never really talked. She wasn't anything like her mother, who carried herself with that cold, condescending air. Megan was different, more open, more kind, but now she was caught in the middle of a confrontation she hadn't expected. Mom, what's happening? Megan asked again, her gaze flicking between her mother and the mayor. She must have sensed the underlying tension in the air. Sarah turned to her daughter, her face still red with anger. She forced a smile, though it looked strained. Nothing, honey, nothing you need to worry about. Just some people who don't know how to follow the rules. You're breaking the law, you know, Sarah added quickly, turning back to me, trying to reassert her control. And that's not something we can ignore. Rules exist for a reason. They keep order. But before I could say anything, Robinson stepped in, his voice steady but firm. It's not the breaking of the law that's the problem, Miss Sarah. It's the fact that the law doesn't always account for the circumstances behind it. It's easy to sit in your ivory tower and judge. But when you're in the dirt, struggling to survive, things look different. The words hit me hard, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I started to believe that maybe this life I was living, this fight for survival, could actually lead to something better. Maybe Robinson was right. Maybe there was hope. Sarah's expression faltered for a moment, and for a brief second I thought she might back down. But then the fire in her eyes returned. She wasn't one to admit defeat, not in front of others, especially not in front of her daughter. You're encouraging him to break the law, she said, her voice rising. You're encouraging this kind of behavior. If people like him aren't stopped, they'll think they can get away with anything. Megan glanced back at her mother, her eyes filled with confusion and something else, maybe uncertainty. She didn't seem sure where to stand, but one thing was clear. She was starting to question her mother's stance. Mom, Megan said softly, her voice trembling just a little, why are you so angry at him? He's just trying to survive. Isn't that what we're all doing? Sarah's face twisted in disbelief. What are you talking about? You can't just let people do whatever they want because they're struggling. That's not how the world works. Megan stepped back a little, her eyes meeting mine for the first time. Maybe it's not how the world should work, though, she said quietly. Maybe we need to do more to help people like him, not just tear them down. I felt my heart skip a beat. Megan's words were like a breath of fresh air. For a moment, it was as if everything had changed, like there was hope in the air, a possibility for something better. But it didn't last long. Sarah's face darkened with anger, her lips tight. You're too young to understand. This is about respect, about order. It's about doing things the right way. But Megan wasn't backing down. She stood her ground, her voice growing more confident. Maybe the right way isn't always the best way. Maybe it's about doing what's right, not just what's convenient. I could feel the shift in the air. The tension was thick, but there was something different now. Something was changing, and for the first time today, I felt like I wasn't invisible anymore. Before anything else could be said, Robinson stepped forward, his voice clear and resolute. This city is built on people like you, Miss Sarah, he said. People who think they have all the answers, but it's also built on people like me and Jake. People who've been knocked down, who've had to scrape by, people who deserve a chance to get up. And that's what I'm here for. Sarah looked like she was about to say something, but she held herself back, her mouth tight. For once, she didn't have a response. She didn't know how to fight back against Robinson's calm conviction. I could see it in her eyes. She didn't know how to win this battle. You can't fix everything, Mayor, she muttered finally, still fuming, but you sure as hell try. Robinson smiled slightly, his eyes softening. I'll keep trying, Miss Sarah. I'll keep trying. And with that, he turned and walked away, his footsteps steady, leaving Sarah and Megan to stand in the middle of the street, surrounded by the remnants of a confrontation that had just begun to shift the tide. As for me, I stood there still clutching the candy in my hand. For the first time in a long time, I felt like maybe, just maybe, I had a future. A future where people like me weren't invisible, where there was a chance to rise above the dirt. The day after the confrontation with Sarah, everything felt different. As I walked down the same street, the one I'd been selling candy on for weeks, it was like the whole world had shifted. The people passing by still ignored me, of course, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed in the air. Maybe it was just the hope that Robinson had sparked in me. Maybe it was just the fact that I'd been seen by someone who actually understood. Whatever it was, I felt like I wasn't invisible anymore. I hadn't seen Robinson since that day, but I kept thinking about what he said, about helping people, about giving them a chance. I couldn't help but wonder if maybe, just maybe, he really meant it. I wasn't sure what to expect next, but the small glimmer of possibility that had been ignited in me kept me going. For the first time in a long time, I felt like maybe my life wasn't set in stone. That's when I saw her again, Megan. She was walking toward me, her expression more thoughtful than before. I wasn't sure if it was the way her mother had treated me or if something else was going on, but Megan was looking at me differently. She walked up to me slowly, a slight frown on her face. "Hey," she said, her voice soft but warm. "I've been thinking about what happened yesterday." "Yeah?" I said, trying to keep my voice steady. It felt strange to be having a conversation with her. Not because I didn't want to, but because I never imagined someone like me would get a chance to talk to someone like her. "Yeah," she continued. "You know, my mom, she's always been like that, always so caught up in what she thinks is right. But I don't think she really gets it. I think I'm starting to get it now, though." I raised an eyebrow. "Get what?" "Get what people like you are going through," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've never really thought about it before, but I can't stop thinking about how much you must have to struggle just to survive. And then my mom just wants to call the cops on you because you're doing what you can to eat." Her words hit me harder than I expected. I didn't know how to respond at first, but the more she spoke, the more I realized that maybe, just maybe, she was different from the rest of her family. Maybe she wasn't like her mother. Maybe there was a chance that people like me could make a difference after all. "Thank you," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "That means more to me than you know." Megan smiled slightly, though it looked a little sad. "I know I can't fix everything," she said, "but if I can help, I will." "You already are," I said softly, meeting her gaze. "You already are." She nodded, and for a moment we stood there in silence, just looking at each other. The world around us kept moving, people rushing by, the city pulsing with its usual energy. But in that moment, it felt like everything had slowed down, like there was hope, and for the first time it didn't seem so far out of reach. "So," Megan said, breaking the silence, "what's next for you? What are you going to do now?" I shrugged, unsure. "I don't know, but I'm not giving up, that's for sure." Megan looked at me, her eyes full of determination. "You shouldn't. I think you're going to make it." Just then, the sound of footsteps interrupted us, and we both turned to see Robinson walking toward us, his calm demeanor never wavering. "Hey, Jake," he greeted me, nodding his head in acknowledgement. "How's it going?" "Better," I said, feeling a small smile tug at my lips. "Thanks to you." Robinson smiled warmly. "I'm glad to hear that. Listen, I was thinking I might be able to help you out. I've got some connections with social services, and I think we could get you into a program that might give you a better shot." I was speechless. I hadn't expected him to come through like this, not in the way he was offering. Social services wasn't a place I had ever thought to go for help. It felt like one of those things that wasn't meant for people like me. But here was Robinson, offering it without hesitation. "You'd really do that?" I asked, my voice faltering. "You really want to help me?" "Of course I do," Robinson said, his voice firm. "You're not the first person I've helped, Jake, and you won't be the last. Everyone deserves a chance, especially people who want to change." I didn't know what to say. For the first time, it felt like my life could actually change, that there was a future where I didn't have to fight every day just to survive. Megan looked at me, her eyes wide with surprise. "That's amazing," she said softly. Robinson smiled at both of us, his eyes shining with a quiet determination. "We'll get you started on the right path. It won't be easy, but I know you can make it." I felt a weight lifting off my shoulders, a weight I hadn't even realized was there. For the first time in years, I felt like I had someone in my corner, someone who believed in me. "Thank you," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Robinson clapped me on the back. "Don't thank me yet, Jake. This is just the beginning." Plus, the next few days passed in a blur. With Robinson's help, I started to see a way forward. Social services set me up with a temporary shelter, and they connected me with a job training program. It wasn't much, but it was something. A start, a chance. Megan kept in touch, offering me words of encouragement whenever we saw each other. It felt strange at first, having someone care, but I couldn't deny the warmth that spread through me whenever she smiled at me. I never thought someone like me, someone who had always been forgotten by society, could find a place in someone else's heart. But things weren't perfect, not by a long shot. There were still the whispers, the looks, the judgment. Sarah's disdain was palpable every time we crossed paths, and Lily, well, she didn't seem to be backing down from her stance either. But Robinson was right. I couldn't let that stop me. I had a chance now, a real chance. I kept my head down, worked hard, and slowly but surely, things started to change. Not just for me, but for others too. Robinson's programs started making a difference in the community, offering people like me a way out of the cycle of poverty. And then one day I saw Sarah again. She was standing on the same street corner where everything had started, but this time there was something different about her. She wasn't scowling. She wasn't looking down at people like me. Instead, she was talking to a woman who had been struggling just like I had, offering her a hand, offering help. It was subtle, small, but it was a start. Maybe, just maybe, people could change. I was standing by the same street corner where it all started. The hustle and bustle of the city never stopped. I had become so used to being overlooked, blending in with the background. Selling candy was still my way of surviving, but now something had changed. I wasn't sure exactly what, but it felt like there was a possibility of a different future, one that wasn't defined by the streets. Maybe that's why I stood there for a moment longer, just taking it all in, when suddenly I saw her again, Sarah. She was walking quickly, her heels clicking on the pavement, her eyes fixed on her phone. She didn't see the car speeding toward her, the horn blaring or the screeching of tires as it approached. Everything happened so fast. I don't know what made me act, but before I could think, my body moved on its own. I rushed forward, grabbing her arm and yanking her back just in time. The car swerved around us, narrowly missing both of us. I heard the screech of the tires echo in my ears, my heart pounding in my chest. We both stumbled back onto the sidewalk, and I helped her steady herself. "Are you okay?" I asked, my voice shaky, still feeling the adrenaline coursing through my veins. Sarah looked at me, her face pale. She blinked a few times, as if trying to process what had just happened. Then, for the first time, her expression softened. I think so," she said, her voice unsteady. Thank you. You saved my life." I nodded, trying to calm my breathing, just doing what I could. No one else was close enough. She seemed to study me for a moment, like she was seeing me for the first time. For once, she didn't look at me with disdain or judgment. There was no contempt in her eyes, just gratitude. "I didn't even see the car coming," she murmured, still shaken. "You didn't have to help me." I felt an odd sense of calmness spread over me. "It's not about having to," I replied quietly. "It's about doing the right thing when it matters." Sarah was quiet for a moment, clearly processing what had just happened. Then she turned to me, her voice softer than usual. Maybe I've been wrong about you," she admitted, looking down at the ground before meeting my eyes again. "About people like you." My heart skipped a beat. This was the moment I hadn't seen coming. The Sarah I knew had never apologized for anything, let alone admitted that she had been wrong. "I've been harsh," she continued, her voice filled with uncertainty. "I've always thought that people like you didn't deserve any sympathy. I thought that if you just worked harder, if you just followed the rules, things would be better. But I see now that it's not that simple. You saved my life, and maybe you deserve more than just being treated like an invisible problem." There was something in her eyes that I had never seen before. Guilt, maybe, or recognition. She looked at me like I was no longer a nuisance, but a person who mattered. "You're not invisible," I said quietly, not knowing if she would believe me or not. Sarah stayed silent for a moment, her thoughts clearly racing. Then she gave a small, almost reluctant nod. "I think I've been wrong," she said again, this time more firmly. "I've spent so much time judging people for their circumstances that I forgot to see the whole picture. I forgot to see what they're going through, why they're struggling, and I've been selfish. I didn't realize how much of a difference it makes just to show kindness, just to care." Her words hung in the air, and for the first time I saw a different side of Sarah. The woman who had always looked down on me, who had called the cops on me, who had treated me like I was nothing. Now she was looking at me like I was something more, someone who deserved a chance. After that moment, things started to shift. Over the next few weeks, Sarah began to change in small ways. She'd smile at me when we crossed paths on the street, her expression softer than before. She no longer looked at me with judgment, but with a sense of understanding, as though she was seeing me in a new light. One day, I received a letter in the mail. It was from Sarah. "Dear Jake," the letter began, "I've been thinking a lot about our encounter, about everything you've been through, and I realized that I want to do something to help. I want to make a real difference in your life and in the lives of others who are in situations like yours. The letter went on to explain that Sarah had started a fund to help kids and young adults who had been through difficult circumstances like mine, people who had been homeless or who were struggling to make ends meet. She mentioned that she wanted to sponsor my education and get me into a job training program that would help me gain real skills and get a better job. You deserve a chance, Jake, she wrote, and I want to be the one to help you get it. When I read that letter, I felt something I hadn't in a long time. Hope. Hope that maybe I could build a future for myself. Hope that I could stop being invisible. It wasn't an easy road. Nothing worth having ever is. But with Sarah's help, things started to change. I went through job training programs, got help with my resume, and even started looking for real work. The first few months were difficult, old habits die hard, and the scars of my past were still fresh. But with each step, I felt stronger, more capable. There were moments of doubt, times when I felt like giving up, but every time I thought about quitting, I thought about Sarah's letter, how she had taken a chance on me when no one else had, how she saw me, not as a problem to be solved, but as a person with potential. It pushed me to keep going. As for Sarah, she became a constant presence in my life, not just as someone who was helping me, but as someone who truly cared. She kept in touch, checking in on me and making sure I was on the right track. She even invited me to some of the events she held for her foundation, and it was there that I met others who were also working to turn their lives around. I'll never forget the day I stood in front of a group of young people sharing my story. Sarah was in the crowd watching with pride. It felt surreal to be where I was, to be able to say that I was no longer just a kid selling candy on the street, but someone who had a future. "You've come a long way," Sarah said to me one evening after the event. "I'm proud of you, Jake." "I couldn't have done it without you," I replied, feeling a lump in my throat. "You gave me the chance to believe in myself." She smiled, her eyes warm with genuine affection. "You did all the hard work, Jake." No, I'm right. "I just helped you find your way." And in that moment, I realized that everything had changed. Not just for me, but for Sarah too. She had changed the way she saw the world. And maybe, just maybe, we could both make it through, together. Yeah. So what do you think about this story? Do you believe that we all need a second chance to change our lives? Or can we help those around us, just like Sarah helped Jake? Share your thoughts in the comments below this video. Have you ever been in a similar situation? How could you help someone change their life like this? Join the conversation and leave your comments. If you enjoyed this story and found it meaningful, don't forget to like and share the video with your friends so they can also feel the power of change and kindness. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button to not miss out on more amazing stories coming soon. Let's keep spreading kindness together.